All right, so are you ready to dive deep?
Let's do it.
Today, we're tackling something I think is on everyone's minds. Staying healthy as we age.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I have to say, the sources you sent over from the Mayo Clinic, FamilyDoctor.org, and the NIDDK are packed with some eye-opening stuff. I've already learned a lot just prepping for this.
I bet. It's fascinating,
Yeah,
People tend to focus on, all the downsides of getting older.
right.
But the thing is, our bodies are incredible. They can adapt in amazing ways.
That's so true. And it's encouraging too, right? Because it means we have some control over the process.
Absolutely. We have a lot more power than we think to influence how we age.
Totally. And these sources, they really dig into that. They get into the nitty-gritty of what's actually happening in our bodies. Should we start with the heart? I mean, we all know it works harder as we get older, right? Blood vessels stiffen.
Yeah, definitely. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Go on.
The heart muscle itself actually changes shape as we age.
What? Really?
It remodels itself to handle the increased pressure from those stiffening blood vessels.
Wow. That's amazing.
Isn't that wild?
It is wild. It's like our bodies are working with us, even when things get a bit tougher.
Yeah, for sure.
But of course, we can make things easier for our bodies, right? I mean, the sources talk a lot about exercise, diet, managing stress, all that good stuff.
Yeah, all the usual suspects.
Exactly.
But the key, I think, is really understanding why these things matter. It's not just about living longer. It's about the quality of life as we age. Like that Mediterranean diet everyone's talking about these days.
Yeah.
It's not just good for your heart. It's linked to better cognitive function, too.
Hold on, seriously.
Yeah.
So you're saying eating fish and veggies could actually help keep my brain sharp as I get older?
Exactly.
Sign me up.
And it's not just what you eat, it's how you move, too. When we talk about weight-bearing exercise, we usually think about bone health, preventing fractures.
Right, of course. Makes sense, right? Bones get weaker, they break more easily.
Yeah, but it's actually deeper than that.
Oh.
Weight-bearing exercise, it actually stimulates cells called osteoblasts, and those are the ones that build new bone tissue. So you're not just slowing down bone loss, you're actually promoting bone growth.
Wow. I never thought about it that way. It's like you've got a construction crew working on your skeleton.
Exactly. And get this, the same exercises that are good for your bones,
Yeah.
they're also good for your muscles and your heart. It's all connected.
So that daily walk, triple win. I like those odds. But speaking of things that change with age, let's talk about, digestion.
Oh, yeah.
The Mayo Clinic source mentioned some pretty interesting stuff.
Right.
Apparently, things actually change structurally in the large intestine as we get older, which, can lead to constipation.
Right.
It's not just about things slowing down.
That's so true. And that's why just taking a fiber supplement might not be enough sometimes.
Right.
We need to look at the bigger picture.
Makes sense.
Hydration, of course, is crucial.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But also, physical activity plays a big role.
Oh, yeah, you need to keep things moving. And this actually, it makes me think about another area where that use it or lose it principle really applies. Urinary health. I was surprised to learn that the bladder actually loses elasticity as we age.
It does, yeah.
Which I guess explains those more frequent bathroom trips, huh?
Yeah, and it's not just that.
Okay.
Those weakened bladder muscles,
Right.
they can make it harder to fully empty the bladder, too, which can lead to some other issues.
It's definitely not something you want to mess around with.
Nope.
So what can we do? I mean, Kegels, right?
Kegels are definitely a good thing, yes. They strengthen those pelvic floor muscles. But you know what else can make a big difference? Just maintaining a healthy weight.
Oh, interesting.
Because that extra weight, it puts pressure on the bladder,
I see.
which can make those issues worse.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that connection. It's amazing how much it all ties together.
It really is.
And it's all about being proactive. And speaking of being proactive, I think a lot of us worry about memory decline as we get older, this dreaded senior moment.
Oh, for sure.
But the sources I read, they actually emphasize that, minor memory slips, they're totally normal.
Yeah, they are. It's actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
The brain continues to change throughout life, even in healthy aging.
Really?
Oh, yeah. New connections can form. We can even generate new brain cells.
Wait, new brain cells? No way.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it is. And guess what helps promote that growth?
Let me guess. Exercise, diet, mental stimulation.
You got it.
So you're saying that learning a new language or picking up a musical instrument, it's not just about keeping busy, it's actually keeping my brain young.
Exactly.
I love it. And speaking of things that tend to decline with age, vision and hearing are big ones, right?
They are, but there's a lot we can do to protect those senses.
Like what?
Well, regular checkups are super important, and being aware of environmental factors. For example, did you know that long exposure to loud noises can damage the hair cells in your inner ear?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, those tiny hair cells are really delicate.
So wearing earplugs at concerts, it's not just about avoiding ringing ears that night. It's about preventing long-term damage.
Exactly. It's all about prevention. And that goes for oral health, too. We tend to think of tooth loss as inevitable with age, but it's not always the case.
Right.
A lot of it's preventable.
Yeah, good oral hygiene is important at any age. But you know what these sources highlighted that I hadn't thought much about before? Medications.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, a lot of common medications can cause dry mouth, which increases your risk of cavities and gum disease.
That's a good point. It's a reminder to always talk to your doctor or dentist about potential side effects of medications.
For sure. And while we're talking about things we can't always see, let's talk about skin health. I mean, I'm trying to embrace the wrinkles and age spots as badges of honor, but
I hear you.
But the sources did point out something interesting. Our skin actually produces less oil as we age.
It does.
Which is why it tends to get drier.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So those gentle skincare practices you mentioned,
Yeah.
they're not just about vanity. They're about keeping that skin barrier healthy, which protects us from infection and irritation.
So moisturizing is actually a form of self-defense.
You can say that.
I love it. Okay, we've talked about a lot of changes that happen with age.
We have.
But there's one kind of elephant in the room I guess we should address.
Okay.
Weight gain.
Yeah,
Our metabolism slows down, right?
it does.
Is it really inevitable that we're all going to pack on the pounds?
Well, it's not just about metabolism.
Oh.
Body composition changes too.
How so?
Well, we tend to lose muscle mass as we age, and muscle burns more calories at rest than fat.
Ah, I see.
So even if you're eating the same amount as you did when you were younger, you might still gain weight because you're losing that calorie-burning muscle.
So it's even more important to focus on strength training as we get older.
Exactly. It's not just about cardio. It's about maintaining that muscle mass
Yeah.
to keep your metabolism going and keep your body strong.
Okay, I'm taking notes. We've covered a lot of ground here, from hearts and bones to bladders and brains.
I have.
But there's one more topic I think we need to dive into. One that often gets overlooked when we talk about aging.
Okay, what's that?
Sexual health.
Oh, yes.
It's a big one.
It is. And these sources, they don't shy away from it either.
That's great.
They acknowledge that our sexual needs and performance can change over time,
Right.
which is totally normal.
Totally. But I think a lot of people, they worry about those changes, especially when they start to, affect their relationships or their sense of self.
Absolutely.
So let's break it down. What are some of the common things that people experience, like specifically as they get older?
All right. Well, for women, one of the biggest changes is menopause.
Okay.
The decline in estrogen can lead to vaginal dryness, which can make intercourse uncomfortable.
I see.
And for men, well, erectile dysfunction becomes more common with age.
So it's not just in our heads.
No, not at all.
These are real physiological changes happening.
Exactly. And it's important to remember, these changes often happen gradually. It's not like you wake up one day and boom, everything's different.
Okay, that is reassuring. But I imagine it can still be frustrating, even a bit scary for some people.
Oh, definitely. And that's why communication is key.
With your partner, you mean?
Exactly. The Mayo Clinic source, they really emphasize that open, honest communication with your partner is so important.
Makes sense. Talk about your needs, your concerns.
Exactly. And be willing to explore new ways of connecting, not just physically, but emotionally too.
That makes a lot of sense. But sometimes, even with good communication, those physical changes can be a real barrier.
Right.
So what can people do to address those specific issues?
Well, the good news is that there are options.
Sounds good.
For vaginal dryness, there are lubricants and moisturizers, as well as estrogen creams that can help.
Okay.
And for erectile dysfunction, you've got medications like Viagra and Cialis and other treatments like penile injections or vacuum pumps.
Wow. There are more options than I realized.
There really are. And it's so important to remember, you don't have to suffer in silence. If you're struggling, talk to your doctor.
Yeah, that's good advice.
They can help you figure out the best way to address these things.
That's such an important message, but I think sometimes people hesitate to talk to their doctor about, these kinds of things.
I get it. It can feel embarrassing.
Yeah, it can feel taboo almost.
Yeah. But doctors are there to help. And trust me, they've seen and heard it all.
Right.
Plus, the more we talk about these issues openly and honestly, the less stigma there will be.
So true. We need to normalize these conversations.
Absolutely. And it's not just about addressing problems. It's also about recognizing that sexuality is a lifelong journey. It evolves and changes, but it doesn't have to end.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So what are some things that people can do to cultivate a healthy and fulfilling sex life as they age?
Well, first and foremost, take care of your overall health. The NIDDK source, it focuses on general health recommendations for older adults, and they really emphasize that physical activity can actually improve sexual function.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
So circulation improves flexibility, and it can even increase libido.
So that daily walk isn't just good for our hearts and bones, it's good for our sex lives too. Okay, I am definitely on board with this.
Exactly. And a healthy diet plays a role too. Certain foods, like those rich in antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids, they can support blood flow and hormone production, which are important for sexual health.
Wait a minute, so that Mediterranean diet, it strikes again.
It really does. But, it's not just about the physical stuff.
Oh, all right.
Mental and emotional well-being are super important too.
Of course.
Stress, anxiety, depression, they can all take a toll on our libido.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're not feeling good overall, it's hard to, get in the mood.
Exactly. So things like mindfulness, meditation, therapy, they can be incredibly helpful for managing stress, improving emotional well-being,
Okay.
which, can then have a positive impact on your sex life.
So it's really a holistic approach.
Exactly.
Taking care of our bodies, our minds, and spirit.
Exactly. And remember, it's never too late to start. No matter your age, you can take steps to improve your sexual health and well-being.
I love that. It's so empowering to know that we have agency in this area of our lives, even as we get older.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of just intimacy and connection. Sex is just one part of that. Cuddling, kissing, holding hands, just spending quality time together.
Yeah.
Those things can all strengthen your bond with your partner.
That's such an important reminder. It's about nurturing those connections and finding joy in, all the ways we can express love and intimacy.
Exactly. And, the familydoctor.org source, they brought up something really interesting about the psychological benefits of sex.
Oh, okay. Like what?
It can boost self-esteem, reduce stress, even improve sleep.
Wow. So it's good for our mental health, too. I'm sensing a theme here.
Right. Taking care of our sexual health is part of taking care of our overall well-being at any age.
Okay, we've covered so much ground here. From the physical changes that happen as we age to the importance of communication, intimacy, and even seeking medical help when needed. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to you, our listener.
Yeah. What has resonated most with you today? What are you taking away from this conversation?
Are there any areas of your own health and well-being that you feel inspired to focus on?
It really has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yes.
We've covered so much.
We have, from the tiny cellular level changes to the bigger picture stuff, the emotional and social aspects of getting older.
Yeah, and it all ties together.
It really does. And what's been most striking to me?
What's that?
It's how interconnected everything is. Our physical health and our mental well-being, our relationships, even our sense of purpose.
Yeah.
It all plays a role in how we age.
Absolutely. And, looking back at all three sources, the Mayo Clinic, familydoctor.org, and the NIDDK,
Yeah.
there's one key takeaway that really stands out.
Okay, what's that?
It's the power of choice. Every day, we make choices that shape our aging journey.
That's true.
From what we eat to how much we move, how we manage stress, how we nurture our relationships. All those choices, they have a real impact over time.
You're right. It's empowering to realize that we actually have more control than we might think.
Exactly.
Aging isn't just something that happens to us.
Right.
It's something we actively participate in.
Exactly. And the great thing is it's never too late to start making positive changes.
That's true.
Whether you're in your 40s, 60s, or 80s,
Yeah.
there's always something you can do to improve your health and well-being.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
We've talked about so many strategies for healthy aging,
We have.
but what's that one thread that connects them all?
I'd say it's self-care.
Self-care.
Yeah. Not in a pampering, indulgent kind of way, but in a deeper, more meaningful way.
Okay.
It's about making choices that really honor your body, your mind, and your spirit.
I like that.
It's about prioritizing your health and well-being, not just for today, but for the long haul.
And it's about recognizing that aging isn't something to be afraid of.
Right.
It's a natural part of life, and it can be filled with so much joy and purpose and connection.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, think about this. What choices can I make today that will support my health and happiness in the years to come?
It's a powerful question, and I hope it stays with all of you long after this episode ends.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into healthy aging.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another insightful exploration.
It's been a pleasure talking about all this.
It really has, and I think it's important to keep these conversations going.
I agree.
You know, we tend to compartmentalize these different aspects of health, physical, mental, emotional.
Yeah.
But this deep dive has really highlighted how intertwined they all are.
It's all connected.
And it's not just about adding years to our lives, it's about adding life to our years. Right?
Exactly. And I think these sources, the Mayo Clinic, FamilyDoctor.org, and the NIDDK, they all offer a really hopeful message.
Yeah. What's that?
It's that we have the power to shape our own aging journey.
We're not just along for the ride.
Exactly. We can make choices that support our health and well-being at every stage.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key piece of advice you would give our listeners? What's that one thing they can start doing today to age well?
I'd say find something you love that gets you moving.
Oh, I like that.
It could be dancing, gardening, hiking, swimming, anything that brings you joy and gets your heart rate up.
Because movement is medicine, right?
It really is.
And it's not just about the physical benefit.
Right? It can boost your mood, reduce stress, and even help you sleep better.
It's a win-win.
Exactly. And remember, it's never too late to start.
That's so important to remember.
Even small changes can make a big difference over time. So if you're feeling inspired to make a change, start small and be patient with yourself.
And celebrate every step you take towards a healthier and happier you.
Absolutely. And don't forget to have fun along the way.
That's key. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into healthy aging.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another insightful exploration.